Hi everyone, thanks for joining me for this little lesson. I am planning on a couple of pages in my sketchbook with watercolor, and I recently went on a trip to the Hawaiian Islands, and these roosters and chickens are all over the place. They're not native, but they sure are beautiful. They start making their presence known way before dawn. They're kind of loud, but they're fun to listen to and watch. And so I thought and also I think they're really fun to paint. In my pastel painting lessons, my monthly pastel painting lessons online, we did a whole month of chickens and ducks, so that was really fun. So this is just a few more roosters and chickens. So I'm going to use my pan. This is a Sennelier pan of 48 colors. It's a beautiful set, and just a few other tools. I'm going to use a couple of brushes, number 7 Utrix Sablette. I like these brushes. They're really sturdy, not super expensive, and so they're good to travel with. This is a Utrix number 12 Sablette. And I've got a couple of other tools here too. I've got a Bic Clickster. This is just a Bic, I think it's a Bic, it's a Pilot extra fine ballpoint. Actually, it's a rolling ball. And then this is a Watercolor monolith. I like these pencils. It's a graphite pencil. It just doesn't have a wooden sheath. This one happens to be HB, but you can get these in all different hardnesses as well. And if I needed a pink pearl eraser and a kneaded eraser. The other thing I'm going to have handy is a couple of jars of clean water. So I've got 2 fairly big jars. And the reason for 2 separate jars rather than one larger jar, so I'm going to use one of these jars is going to be used for rinsing out my brush, and one is going to be used for adding water to my mixes. So that's the idea there. Now, when I'm out in the field with my sketchbook, obviously I'm not going to have this, but when I'm at home and have the luxury of a little bit more space, it's really nice to have, and this way, if you're disciplined about it, you can keep your mixes really nice and clean. Also, a little spray bottle. I'm going to go ahead and moisten my pans here. The other thing that's nice and handy to have is a chart. The watercolors are, some of these colors are difficult to see. Like this is dioxazine purple. I happen to know where it is in the pan. I try to keep the pan in the same order and to correspond exactly to my chart so I can really tell what's what. Some of these are a little difficult to see. Now I went ahead and planned out my page a little bit, so I'm going to put one rooster right in this section here. I'm going to have him sitting kind of right in here. So I'll go ahead and do a little just nice and loose sketch of him. And, for me, watercolor is just absolutely a wonderful media for sketching. And for beginners and experienced artists, for beginners, it's really just such a forgiving medium. It's portable, it's expandable, and so you can get started with a much smaller pan than this. So, I think that it's really cool. It's also, watercolor is really durable and permanent once it dries. It doesn't smudge like pencil or pastel. So once you've got it here in your sketchbook, you're really kind of good to go. So I'm going to here's my main rooster. It's a couple of kind of ellipse kind of shapes, kind of bean type shapes kind of put together. Here's his leg. I'm going to have his leg, one leg out here. He's kind of strutting along. And this one's out here. And then his tail feathers. Now, the photo that I'm using, his tail feathers aren't as prominent, but I'm going to go ahead and give him a little extra in terms of these and let them kind of be flying around a little bit more. He's got these cool white ones here. He's really something. And then the beautiful gold array right here. Just kind of get it in And the other thing for me with watercolor, I'm not a watercolor purist. I work in many different medias, so I can really play with the watercolor. I'm not looking to be have it be like my absolute end all, and that kind of frees me up. Lets me be much more again, just much more free with the media. And I always feel like whatever I do in watercolor is going to inform everything else that I do. I think that that's true for whatever media you do use. They all kind of play together really, really well, and you can they help one another. I think that's pretty good. One thing I do think maybe his head's maybe a little bit too large, because this piece right here, it kind of narrows a little bit more. So that's these long necks. I really think that's kind of cool. So then I'm gonna get his crown on here, and his eye a little bit smaller, just so that head, his body gets to be the big show here. And then he's got, I think that's quite a bit better. And maybe that's even a little exaggerated, but that's okay. So I've got him in there. And so I'll start with him. I'll go ahead and get the watercolor going with him, and then I'll add on the other guys. Now what I'm thinking is another one right here that's maybe kind of coming right towards me, that's behind him, and then maybe one that's over here. Maybe this will be a hen. We'll see what I've got. I've got a bunch of pictures because I just was so fascinated by them on my trip. So thinking that, and then I'm thinking some kind of title for my page that's going to sit in here. Maui chickens is, I think, what I'm going to call this page. And so I think that'll work out. And then over on the other page, the facing page, I think that I'm going to include some landscape so that I can really talk about being on Maui, maybe a little vignette of the ocean, and maybe some of the beautiful vegetation and scenery that's there. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and get some washes in. I want a little more gold to it, so I'll rinse that out. And I always like to keep a little piece of paper towel to wipe my brush with, because I'll get most of the pigment off. And I want to try to keep my brush clean in between colors, so I don't want to mess up the pans too much, contaminate them. So right now I'm getting some orange into that yellow one. It's okay to do, but I do try to keep a little discipline when it comes to the colors, just because it just kind of keeps me organized. I get a little more of this. See that? Just wipe off my brush. So I'm going to get a little bit darker up here, darker down in here, and so I'm just kind of dropping that color into the shape. Now I see a little hint of blue right over in here. And it's just cooler right there. And then as I come down, it gets a little warmer again. And try to be kind of playful with the color and the feathers too. And again, I'm thinking of getting, I'm not a watercolor purist, so I don't mind using a little pencil line or a pen line when I got the washes down. So I'll plan on that. And for me, that again, it just kind of frees me up. Lets me be a little more experimental than I think I would be if I was, oh, this has got to be a watercolor. I could do a little bit of line, kind of suggest that texture that's happening there. It's fun. Grab a little bit of this color. So that's amazing how much color they have. Get some ultramarine blue in here. And then right here, he's got a little area that's light, a light part of his wing here. And these are, again, I just want to be a little more playful, like he's moving, the wind's blowing, and he's moving a little maybe faster than he is here. Now for some fun stuff. There's some color back in here. This is dioxazine purple back here on his backside. And it's okay for these colors to bleed a little bit. I think that's kind of cool. Now I'm going to get into his, down here in his body here. Now it feels like it's almost black. Could use a little black. I don't mind using some black, but I'm going to try to steer away from it just a bit and head to dioxazine purple and maybe some indigo instead. And I can use the wash that I've already got laid down and kind of cut into it, right? See right here, to get those feather-like shapes. And now I'm going to go ahead and add a little more water here. So that's like, with watercolor, it's like adding white. So I can come in and just pull out a little bit of color right there. And then come in a little heavy with the dark, and then get his little silhouette right there. So fun. I'm going to go ahead and drop in a little more color in here, indigo. Now, I like this edge to be a little softer than I've got it. His shadow's right here. See that? So I can play with that idea. Comes like so. And here's his leg. So now with that negative shape, I can start to describe his leg, little claws. And I'll come back in with some pencil line and get that the way I want it. And maybe I'll come in with a little bit of something warmer down here. It's dirt. It's really fun. All right, let's finish out his body here. And see, I can, right here is a little bit of wing. So I'm going back and forth. I'm using both positive and negative. I always like to do that. It's really fun. Get a little bit more of an interesting silhouette going on there. I'm going to go right here and darken this part of his wing because I want it to appear that this is overlapping like so. That's nice. Now what about those feathers in the back? Boy, those are something else. And it's kind of ultramarine blue, but I'm going to add some phthalo blue just for effect, because I like it. Try to come in nice and loose. Now, I want to save some of that white for those little white feathers there. Super fun. Now I'm going to add a little more water here because little water I think is going to let these feathers right here are soft. So if I add some water, I'm going to get some blooms right here that I think are going to be nice and kind of have that character of those soft feathers right there. Now, should we add a little black in here? Maybe a little bit. It's very fun. Could go even crazier with this because it really they really are something. Just to kind of be a little more playful with it. Okay, now I'm going to come back to his head and think about a little more detail here. And I definitely want that red crown going. So I've got lots of nice choices in this pan. Now I go into a lot of detail about the supplies that I'm using in my other watercolor workshops, so go to my website and check it out, paintinglessonswithmarla.com, and check out my other workshops, watercolor sketching, watercolor garden sketching, and more. So, and I go into techniques, the tools and techniques, talk about mixing greens, mixing grays, all the stuff you need to get started. And it's just such a amazing medium, relaxing. It's so great for drawing study, painting and color study, great to practice composition, recording details, diary, journaling, which to me, if there's anything that I would grab in my house, if my house was on fire, it would be my sketchbooks. So I just love them. I treasure them. I think most artists have that same feeling about their sketches. So I'm going to let that dry. I want to come back in with some darks. I'm going to pull out a couple lights here to grab a little form on him here. It's really nice. And I'm gonna get right here, there's a little cast shadow area. Go ahead and grab that. And just maybe switch to my other brush and get a few little things like that in his. Before I move on to the other guys. Okay, just a little color, I think, on his legs here. Just a little hint. Not too much. He is in shadow, so it's not going to be white. It feels like it's got some green on it. And that green is reflecting off the grass. Okay. Really cool. So we'll be able to finish him out. When this dries, we'll go back into him just a little bit. But for now, I think he's looking good. And I am gonna think about what I want to use for the other guys. All right. Now, this one is great. Yeah, he's kind of coming right towards us. So this one, so I want to keep it smaller. So he's smaller in scale. So he appears like he's further away. Of course, I've got my cast shadow here, but I'm going to let that, so that wouldn't totally make sense. But I'm going to let it be because this is a sketch. It's totally cool it doesn't have to reflect exactly as though it's a realistic scene. These could be little vignette guys here. So here's his body and his head kind of turning. So this leg is is further back. And his head's, now it kind of curves like this. And he's going, and there's his beak. That's really cool. And then his tail feathers whip around. And then here's his crown in all its glory. And this waddles. And I'll just put his eye there so we can kind of see what's what. And this actually comes up like that. So I think that's pretty good. And his body goes a little bit like that. So I think this actually comes out a little bit more and it comes down. So it's kind of a cone right here and then stuck on this other shape here, and then there's his feathers. It's a little bigger than I had in mind, but I'm gonna go for it. All right. Now, this time, the main thing that I see here is that dark. So I'm gonna go start there. And get that dark in. Because I'm always thinking about what's the quickest, most direct path to establishing all the shapes and values in the piece. That's my main, that's how I'm going to start. So the biggest, easiest shape for me to see, that's what I'm going to go for. And see, I can use some brush work to start describing that form. That's fun. And just drop in some other color if I want. I could even come in with some red in here and drop some red. I think that might be alizarin crimson. Just drop it in there. Now I can start to get that gold on his neck. It's so pretty. And it's got some red in it. Comes out a little bit more than I've got it. There we go. And then it gradates. Gets darker down here. Wiping off my brush. Get some color in here. That's really fun. So I can drop in some yellow here. I'm just trying to get it to turn a little bit there with this form. There we go. It really looks almost like he's wearing a suit right there. It's fun. Okay, so now those tail feathers again. So the tail feathers in this case are really silhouetting his beak. And there's the white kind of right there, but they're kind of appearing gray because they're kind of in shadow, but that's nice. And then this one kind of main feather, it's really, so I'm gonna just with one stroke come in. Clean it up. And then this one comes up. It actually kind of curls around in the back. That's cool. So this right here, again, I'm going to go ahead and wet that because that's where those soft white feathers are, and they're kind of gray. And so if I do that and let some of that blue just kind of drift into that shape, that'll work out nicely. Cool. Now I'm going to go ahead and do his legs because I think I need to get his little scale here. Maybe use that lemon yellow. Kind of gray, so mix some red and blue. Anytime that you mix the three primary colors together, the triad, primary triad, you're gonna get gray. And depending on the balance of those colors, it'll determines what kind of gray. Is it gonna be a warm or cool gray? And I want this to be kind of on the yellower side, so a little bit more yellow than the blue and the red. Here we go. He is looking pretty good too. So let's get his nice red. And I'm contaminating those colors a little much. I don't want to do that. You get carried away and you forget to be disciplined. But that discipline pays off later when you're moving on to a different project, when you're out, especially out in the field, remembering to stay a little disciplined because you have a lot of factors going on when you're out in the field that you might get sand in your palette, you know, all kinds of things are going on. So as much as you can maintain some order, it's helpful. All right, he's looking good too. And I want to go ahead and get a little bit of dark in this guy and over here. So there's a little cast shadow there. Maybe here. Maybe you need a little bit more red. And this, another wash, another layer. This guy's got a little bit more interesting red. So I'll just come in here. And this is kind of white, but again, it's in shadow, so it's not really going to be white. So just letting colors kind of bleed into it just a bit, I think. I'll do it. Same here, and this beak. And I'm going to connect this up so we don't. There we go. So I'm keeping in mind that I'm going to come in with some pencil or pen line. Get a little cast shadow down here too to set him on the ground. And I want a little more color in there. So I'm dropping a little bit more blue in there. Play with the edges of that cast shadow. And I'm remembering that these guys are not to scale, but they're just placed in a fun way on the page. Okay, I think they need a friend back there. So let's get that. You know, one thing that I think would be fun is to play with this edge too. Let this be a little soft. Kind of connects the two a little bit more, so they're not just statically on the page next to each other. They're kind of connected. Maybe even like this. And let some of that watercolor magic happen on the edge. All right. Now we're rocking and rolling. Let's see, let me find another piece of reference where I can get one more back here. Let's see if I can find one that's headed in the right direction. If I can't, I can just flop my photo. Okay, I found a really fun little photo with this tail feathers just pointing right at you. So I want to keep this one small, so I really want to get the scale right. So his head right here is a little wattle, and his beak, his eye. He's got a, this guy is, this isn't a different location. They're all over the place. This guy, he's strutting away, and here's his crossing. They're just so humorous, and then his feathers are all over here, and let's see, up over the top of his head, and then coming back down. It's so funny. Okay, just like that. So humorous. And then his cast shadow is right doing this kind of fun thing. Like that. Yep. All right, let's get going on this guy. Again, the tail feathers seem like the place to start. This time I'm going to add some phthalo green. He seems to have that. I also see purple in there. So good excuse to really drop some color. Nice fun strokes. Perfect. Comes right back down. It's kind of straight right here. His feathers doing this crazy stuff here. I'm gonna leave a little, see that little line, little white edge. I don't know that it would necessarily do that, but I think it'll work out. Just to separate the two. Now this guy right here, use that phthalo. Yeah, it's pretty nifty. Now, I want to try to get that kind of nice color on him. I'm gonna mix some color. Such a rich rust right there. And the sun's hitting it, so it's really, really pretty. And then it comes down this side. And then it gets darker. Richer red right here. Super fun. Okay, let's get his little legs going. This one is really in shadow. And the other one's in the light. A little bit of shadow right there. So I think that pen is going to help me. And then I want his cast shadow. It's a cool shape. I've got his feather a little long there, but that's all right. He might have longer feathers. And I'm going to flood that cast shadow with a little more color, a little more interesting color. And play with the edges. Let them be a little softer. Sun's out nice and bright, and so his cast shadow is pretty sharp, but I've got the other ones kind of softer, so I think I'm going to let this guy have a little bit softer cast shadow as well. And then he needs his red crown. Which in his case is quite the show. Be a little playful with it, a little dot, dot, dot. He's kind of really something. I think he knows it too. That is fun. And I'm going to go ahead and soften some of his edges here and let it be a little more loose and let that watercolor do its thing. All right, now I've got all three of these guys in here, and I can start in with some pen line, and I'm letting these blooms happen. I do want to get a little more color in this guy's cast shadow. Let's see if I can get that before it gets too dry. That's pretty fun. And maybe some indication of some of the dirt out here. Just for fun. And just, I'm going to let it bleed over to this other page. Now, I want to think about the lettering a little bit, and I want it to be Maui chickens. So I think I want nice, let's see, maybe not quite that big. Maybe I'll keep it a little smaller and letter space the type out a little bit, meaning just let it be kind of simple lettering, and see, letter space meaning just let there be pretty nice, good amount of space between the letters. And I want to get that kind of even. And I got a little bit more space between the words. And it's good to do this in pencil, because if you make a mistake and come back, if you don't like the letter spacing or the type, and kind of redo it. And I'm not, in this case, you can, if you want, you can even go online and look at some fonts and style your lettering after a font. I'm just kind of winging it a little bit. Maybe I want, yeah, I actually think I want some serifs on this. Ordinarily I don't, but I don't know, there's something about chickens, the word chickens, that seems like it looks kind of good with a serif, little idea of a serif on there, on my type. Something like that. And then I could put in a little bit of text here. I could write a little story about the spot there where I stopped and saw these guys. And what kind of, well, it seems like the type should be red or orange. Let's go ahead and do it. So I try not to get too precious with this. It feels like, oh, it's got to be perfect. It doesn't. And again, if I want to clean up the type, I can come back with some pencil or pen line. So if I don't get it right on the money, it's okay, and I have a second chance to make it a little bit, to improve it a little bit with the pencil or pen. Main thing is I want to spell it right. When it comes, once you got it, once you have it in watercolor, it's a little harder to. And I can see, whoop. Yeah. See, I'm gonna let that little spot dry. I'm gonna come over a little bit. And I try to get the thickness of the letters, yeah, about the same. And the baseline of it, but it's, again, the point is not to have it be perfect. It doesn't have to be. Okay, Cool. And then I can play with the lettering. I can add a drop shadow to it, all kinds of stuff once I get some pen line on there. One thing I do like to do is I like to flood the shape of the letters with a little bit, so it gives it a little bit of that watercolor, gives the letters a little bit of character. So I'm just dropping in a little bit of more paint into the shape. So essentially it's just like when you wet a shape and you add color to it. That's all it really is. I'm just looking for that watercolor look. All right. Great. Now I'm going to wait for it to dry a little bit, and I'm going to head to some pencil and pen line, I think. All right, let's get in here and do some drawing on this guy. It's got a little shape, little structure right there. Its eyes a little higher right there, actually. It's got a little highlight in there. It might be fun to get some gouache and get that in there a little bit later. Might give him a little more character. Texture here. And so adding some line just is an opportunity to give texture, character. Also going to help you suggest the form a little bit. These layers of feathers. So with drawing, it's kind of a combination of suggestion and detail. So I'm not going to do every little feather. I'm going to come up with a series of marks that suggest the way the character of them, how they're laying on top of one another. Just looking, kind of nice close observation. How are the feathers conforming to the base structure of him, his basic shape? What can I do with the line to suggest some idea of movement? Like out here, can I come up here and get the feathers as though they're moving a little bit more than they even are in the photo? Some dots. So just play with it. And this guy, the line can suggest the overlapping of shapes. Like right here, right there. So this line is coming in front of. So that lets that shape, that little structure be behind. Little idea of some so that's super fun. And these little tail feathers, now we can get, again, come out here. And again, a little bit more dynamic than the photo even suggests, but we can look at the other photos and observe them. I watched them, what's going on with them. So using those observational skills, memory a little bit, all of that comes into play to me, drawing and painting, it's like driving. It's, you know, you're kind of doing many processes at once. When you're first learning to draw and paint, you're going to rely primarily on observation until you get a little more secure with your skills. And then when you get a little more secure, then you can start adding, playing with using observation along with memory. But on the whole, you want to draw what you see more than what you know. And then later on, you can draw kind of what you feel and just a more of an impression gets to come into play. But when you're just starting out, just rely, draw what you see. And try to do that in a way that's kind of unvarnished, uninfluenced by what you think it should look like and what you know, or what you think you know. Because oftentimes what we think we know isn't a reliable source for the drawing. Because we're drawing things that are, the context is usually different. Their feet are so funny. All right, now I'm going to come up and do a little bit. I like the feathers here in the back, so I don't want to do too much line. I think they kind of turned out pretty nice in the watercolor, so I'm not going to get in there and mess with it too much. But just to keep a consistent look throughout the thing, I'm going to add a couple little lines, couple things, so that kind of stylistically my drawing, I want it to kind of hang together. That's super fun. Now you can come in and get a little thick and thin, so maybe some thicker lines along with some thinner lines, and some, you can play with that too. Maybe where you want a little harder edge, you can get in there a little stronger with a thicker line. Maybe where the feathers are, it's more of a thin, wispy line. So on the contour of his body, maybe just a little thicker right here where this feather is casting a shadow on the body. Can get a little cross hatching, something like that. Here, there's this other feather that's not, it's kind of in shadow. Kind of do something like that. These are kind of layered. So under here, there might be some hatching, which is going to suggest that layering. That's fun. Now, this guy, I'm going to use a lighter, wispier line on this so that this one is a little bit bolder and moves forward. So on him, I'm going to use a little less line. So I'm going to find his photo. Let's see, where did he go? Up. I know he's in this group. It's not that one. There he is. All right, there we go. So less is more on this. And I wanted a couple lines to really get his gesture. But that's primarily what I'm after. I'm not going for the detail here as much as I am just that gesture and his pose, if you will. And even that, I don't really want to overdo it. Get a little bit of the character, his character, but not kind of avoiding getting into too much detail. So that he's kind of sitting there a little more distant. I like his feathers. I'm going to pretty much leave that alone. I do like, I think I do want to grab some gouache to get the highlights in their eyes. That'd be fun. Okay, so that's enough for him. So the other guy is in a different group. Ah, I remember. He was at the beginning of my trip. Here we go. Coming right up to him. All right. And here he is. Cool. All right, so the main thing again with him is that gesture and probably just really kind of setting the baseline of his feet. Here, this foot is actually like that, and it's coming, this leg is doing this, coming towards us, and this little claw is kind of up in the air right there, and then these are like that. It's so fun. So just drawing is just kind of figuring what's, where things are kind of sitting in space, what's moving forward, what's turning away from you. And just, again, that kind of just observing. And there really isn't a wrong answer. Can't really mess it up. It's a sketch. That's what's great about just when I orient myself with watercolor, it's watercolor sketching. It's not really meant to be a final piece. It's a record here of my great experience watching these funny guys, funny critters. All right, so now I might want to do some little dots and dashes to suggest that the dirt and the rocks and that they're at this kind of thing. And I could come in with a little more watercolor, but I think it's pretty fun. Like to get some teeny bit of gouache and maybe see some little marks like that, little pebbles. Could even do a little cast shadow like so. A little edge. There's some kind of sticks. That kind of thing. Don't want to overdo it. Don't need to. Can place them, a little cluster of them, that kind of thing. Just have fun with it. I am going to do one thing here. I'm going to set him down on the ground a little more cast shadow right there on him. And so this guy, this leg, this foot gets to be kind of up in the air, and that's really fun. When I set this one down, this one appears more as though it's up in the air. And here, let this guy a little bit, like so. Same thing here. Fun. Maybe a little bit of value, cast shadow on these rocks. Now, one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little blue sky in here, just because I think it would look good. And it was Maui, and the sky was blue. And it's watercolor, so. And I'm going to take this, check this out. I'm going to take this and kind of connect this up with this little wash over here. So the washes have a little bit of a connection with one another. Some idea of some clouds. And it could, really don't want to get too fancy, but I could even come in and just a little subtle idea. And I don't even mind if it bleeds, that's okay. Kind of like it. I like that when the figure-ground relationship gets, they kind of work together. That the figure is part of the landscape a little bit. I'm going to leave this space here. Now I'm going to let this dry, and I am going to outline the lettering, and I am going to come in with a little bit of gouache. Let me see if I've got some right here. Well, but I don't have any gouache. All right, I found a little bit of gouache. I think I can get it happening. Now those little dots in those eyes are small, so I don't want to overdo it. Just that, maybe a little highlight on the beak. This guy had a little bit more, it's a little lighter here. And one thing I would really like to get him a little redder on his right here. Let's see if I can get that. I think it's pretty good. And this is the point here is to be fun and playful, because it was it was fun to see them, and they're just kind of silly, and they weren't afraid at all. They came right up to us. Cool. All right, let's see if this is dry enough to do some outlining. Yeah, I think so. At least I can start in the Maui. And again, I'm not trying to be perfect here with the type. I'm not really looking at any particular font. Just kind of winging it. But if you like, and I like that kind of thing, and sometimes I will do that. But you can just go online and, sans serif or serif font and get so many ideas out there for different typefaces. You can kind of copy. And get really creative, make little stamps, make little type blocks, all kinds of things you can do. The typography really lends a lot of interest to a sketchbook page. And brings it to that kind of journaling space, which I think makes it rich and makes I think the experience for the viewer all the more rich. If you share your sketchbook. Sometimes a sketchbook is not for sharing. Sometimes a sketchbook is just your own personal record. And, I think that that's so cool, really, to do that too, because to not have the expectation that it's viewed, that it's just about the making of it. The pure enjoyment of drawing. For me, it is just even though we're taping this for you guys, it's just, for me, it is just a joy. So a little drop shadow here on the type. And, I don't even know if that's is sort of the correct way to do the drop shadow. I think it looks pretty good though. So, even just a really humble encounter in a parking lot, getting lunch and seeing a bunch of fun roosters makes for a really great subject matter. Just about anything out there. Just have fun, enjoy, and thanks so much for watching.